After a very, very long time of trying to start this whole project, I have finally gotten to making some narrow gauge engines. Now initially, I was kind of hesitant on making narrow gauge engines as my setup is mostly just for displaying double O gauge engines, and I don't have any end scale track at all. But I figured it'd be fun to make them regardless, so I made a few anyways. So far, I have made 4 engines: Skarloey, Rheneas, Peter Sam, and Rusty. And we will cover each engine one by one. For these little guys, we'll just jump straight into the modeling process. And we have 4 models, so this video won't be short of any content. So let's kick this off with Skarloey. Skarloey was the first narrow gauge engine I made, and he was acquired in early 2024. Well, I only bought the model early 2024, and then I put it off for like about a year and a half, give or take, before I bought Rheneas' base model. And then I eventually started work on them about early 2025. Yeah, Skarloey's been waiting for a long time. I first plucked off the face and scraped off the nameplate and number printing. I then primed the model in a brush-on gray acrylic, and then brushed on several super thin coats of Barrel's Flag Red. This is the same red I use for James. Now, painting 009 models is surprisingly tedious. I had to be super careful with painting as I did not want to take apart the entire model down to every single piece, as I know these tiny ass little screws and bits would just be so hard to deal with without possibly breaking them, you know. So I was just painting around a lot of things as carefully as I could. The lining was done via toothpicks along the saddle tank and the sides, and also the cab windows as well. The handrails were so hard to paint, but I'd say they turned out a lot better. Now when it came to generally detailing, I wanted the narrow gauge engines to be in a similar vein to like the shrimper boats from Tugs. They don't have visible megaphones or even faces at all, and they're also just fairly simplistic in their detailing. So I applied this philosophy to my narrow gauge engines. On Skarloey, I kept the pistons free of lining, and also I didn't put any gold or brass paints on the dome either. And I only did lining on the sides, and the ones were intentionally painted on the tanks by hand. Toothpicks and very little amounts of Barrel's King's Gold. And then of course a little touch of gold for the whistle. I then printed, painted, and applied a new smokebox door. This is actually a 3D print file from Thingiverse that has a bunch of little details to modify Buckman Rheneas. I used this door design for all my Skarloey steamies, mostly to give them all a standardized unified look, you know. Then I masked off the wheels and spray painted the body in a matte clear coat, and Skarloey was done. Pretty simple model, but surprisingly difficult to paint. But I'm really happy how he turned out regardless. It looks really good now. Rheneas, or Rheneas, however you want to pronounce it, was made around the same time as Skarloey. And he was honestly a bit easier to paint. I first plucked out the face and then scraped out the numbering, and then went to town with the primer and then red. All the paint here used is the exact same as Skarloey. And also the same design philosophy as well. Although this time I decided to paint the numbering on the sides of the coal bunkers like usually in fictions, as I felt the number 2 on the boiler itself looked kind of wonky. I then printed, painted, and applied the new smokebox door. Again, it's also the same print design as Skarloey's smokebox door, and then masked off the wheels and spray painted the body in a matte clear coat, same as Skarloey. And Rheneas was done, admittedly easier than Skarloey. Now onto my favorite of the bunch, Peter Sam. Sodor's Hope Core Incarnate was made using the Bachmann Peter Sam, and pretty much the exact same process was used here as Skarloey and Rheneas. I removed the face, scraped off the name and numbers, and went to town with the paint. Painting the inside of this cab was so hard. I could not get the cab all the way off for the life of me, and I did not want to snap it off and damage it, as narrow gauge steam engines are so expensive in 009. I was only able to get this many because most of them were on sale, so yeah. So for inside of Peter Sam's cab, I just shoved in the brush of black paint and tried to get it as even as possible. I then painted all the blue details like lining on the saddle tank and cab windows, and also the sides in the model as well. And I then printed, painted, and applied the smokebox door. This is the exact same print file as Skarloey and Rheneas' doors, although I had to scale it up a tiny bit, but it ended up being a little bit larger just by a tiny bit, and I didn't want to waste any more resin since that is expensive, so I just shaved off the edges of it a little bit, and I'd say it fits pretty well. Then painted the number 4 on the tanks. And after a matte clear coat, Peter Sam was done. Honestly, Peter Sam is probably my favorite. He just looks super good. Always looks good in red. I don't know what it is. But now on to Rusty. Rusty was probably the easiest model to make out of these 4. They were made using a Bachmann Rusty, which I removed the cab and then scraped off the numbering. Then I went in with all the paint, same as Skarloey, Rheneas, and Peter Sam. I painted the cab indents black and then later lining them out with blue. The fires are painted onto the engine sides as opposed to the cab sides. I thought this is a little nice touch. The front detailing was a little bit hard to figure out at first. I wasn't really sure what the hell to put even on here, as I didn't want to put a face on. And I also wanted to have a smoke box piece while having to print a super tiny piece for this, you know. In the end, I just used some index card and a little bit of cardboard shaving to make this front in a similar style to the real life Midlander. It isn't really perfect and you can hardly really see definition, but I'd say it's better having just a little flat nothing on it, you know. After giving the model a matte clear coat, Rusty was done. Now, all the difficulties aside with these models, I'd say they're among my favorites I've made. They just look so clean, you know? Very crisp looking with a vibrant red. I love it. As I said before, my favorite's gotta be Peter Sam. He just turned out really well. And the Skarloey Railway engines are among my favorite characters in Thomas in general. And I 100% plan on modeling more of them one day. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all same time next week.